Hello folks, Josh Reeves here. I'm here to tell you about my new audiobook collection now on sale in the download store. The complete Zecharia Sitchin Trilogy audiobook collection. This is the collection of 3 audiobooks that I did on the work of Zecharia Sitchin starting back in 2010 with The Lost Book of Enki, and then continuing on with The End of Days and There Were Giants Upon the Earth. When I first did these audiobooks back starting in 2010, this was not something people were doing yet. I was the first person to do this, and there's been a lot of copycats. There's been a lot of people that have done them since on YouTube and whatnot, but I was the first one to do this and to come up with the concept of doing these and doing them, especially doing them live on a live broadcast on air. So for that reason, some of the audio quality on these things were not the best because there was never any post-production done to them. Well, I recently rediscovered the original master recordings for these audiobooks. The last two that I did, The End of Days and There Were Giants Upon the Earth, those had been lost and were not available for me to include in the complete audiobook collection I did a few years ago. So this new collection actually has stuff that's not available anywhere else. And let me tell you, the improvements I was able to make in the audio quality on these recordings is just amazing, especially with The Lost Book of Enki, because that one was the least good sounding one out of them all. The volume was low. These were never intended to be heard outside of the radio broadcast originally, so there wasn't post-production or anything done to them. But now I've been able to go back with these original source files and adjust the volume levels, adjust all the sound quality, and reduce the noise and everything. And these are far superior to any previous versions of these audiobooks that have been out there before. It's 30 hours total. It's $18, so that's a lot of material. 30 hours, over 30 hours for $18. And when I originally did these, I had never read, not one iota of Zecharia Sitchin's work had I ever read. But ultimately, every time I would start to talk about Sumerian information, Anunnaki information, that kind of thing, someone would always bring up Zecharia Sitchin, and I would just kind of downplay him, go, well, whatever. Who cares? Because my research had nothing to do. People would always try to act and call me a Zecharia Sitchin fan. Oh, you're a Sitchin guy. No, I've never read a single bit of his work. And people would say, well, you're talking about the same stuff he talks about. Right, that's because this information has existed for thousands of years, and it's existed in these tablets long before Zecharia Sitchin ever came along. A lot of people don't get that. And one of the things that I've learned through the years is this is exactly why he was put out there and rose to prominence. It was exactly to do that, so that people would only associate that information with him. And because he got a lot of stuff wrong, people would throw the baby out with the bathwater and assume that all of that information is because it was wild sounding stuff, genetic creation of humans and all this, by these aliens that came to Earth. It's wild sounding stuff. But my research was only based strictly on the reading of the scholarly translations that had existed for a great many years. And so I started to feel like a hypocrite after a while, because I was saying, screw Sitchin, I don't care what that guy says. I've never paid attention to his work. And that's when I realized, well, wait a minute. Instead of just poo-pooing what he does, it would be better, be more informative if I actually read his material and was able to cross-reference that with my own research into these topics that had nothing to do with his information. And then we could separate the wheat from the chaff, and I could tell you what he says that I agree with and things that he says that I disagree with. And that's exactly what I did with these audiobook readings, and I'm really glad that I did that, because I think it's very important for people to understand that most of what Zecharia Sitchin, and I'm not saying this to be pro him, but a lot of the stuff that he talked about is in the scholarly translations, but a lot of it isn't. And there's a great reason for that. About 6 or 7 years ago, I got an email from the researcher, really the guy who was really the first researcher into this stuff, Jordan Maxwell. And Jordan Maxwell had heard me on a radio show and heard me do an interview, and he saw my film, The Spellcasters. And he said, you know what, I have this information. I've had it for many years. I don't know what to do with it. I've never known what to do with it. I'm getting on up there in years. And when I heard your show and saw your movie, I thought, you know what? Here's a guy that is probably going to know more of what to make about this information than I do, because he's researched Scientology, he's researched L. Ron Hubbard, so he probably knows more about what to do with this than I do. So what he told me was, he told me that Zecharia Sitchin, who he knew, told him that some of the information contained in his books that wasn't in the scholarly translations came to him from L. Ron Hubbard. Now, most people know L. Ron Hubbard was a science fiction writer. This was all done prior to the advent of Scientology. And once he started Scientology, he quit writing science fiction books. But for some reason in the 1970s, right around the same time that Zecharia Sitchin started to come out with his material, almost exact same time, he made a comeback with a sci-fi book called Battlefield Earth, which of course they made a movie. And according to what Zecharia Sitchin told Jordan Maxwell, the information that he added that wasn't there in the original text originally, with stuff like the Nibiru and there's just a lot of additions that aren't in the scholarly translations. That information came to him from L. Ron Hubbard, and L. Ron Hubbard wanted him to write these books and put these books and basically appear to be the authority on the Sumerian information, so that when people read Battlefield Earth, L. Ron Hubbard could then point them to the work of Zecharia Sitchin. You see, this is all there. This is real stuff I'm putting in there. And so it would lend credibility to L. Ron Hubbard's work. But really what it was just a way for him to make it look like he was basing his work on real facts, when that wasn't entirely the case. But what happens is that when people ultimately have discussions about the Anunnaki and all of this stuff, the conversation always immediately goes to Sitchin, and always immediately goes to Sitchin was wrong, and all this other stuff, and they throw the baby out with the bathwater. And meanwhile, it makes people believe that all the Sumerian stuff, wild stuff in there, why we don't have to make anything up. People think that all that wild stuff that's in the Sumerian text is just made up by Zecharia Sitchin. It wasn't. All the stuff about, the genetic manipulation, creation of humans and all that, it's all in there. It's all in the scholarly translations. I encourage you to read those if you haven't. But what I've learned through the years is that, we know L. Ron Hubbard was working for the CIA, right? Sitchin himself was asked on several occasions if he worked for the CIA. He would never say he was, and he would never say he wasn't. He would simply kind of give a kind of, smile, and he wouldn't say yes or no. So it's clear that the L. Ron Hubbard Zecharia Sitchin collaboration was all about making him essentially the authority on the Sumerian text, while at the same time giving a platform for people when they would research those texts to hear about it, and make it easier for people to dismiss as just being stuff that was made up by Zecharia Sitchin, when in reality the majority of the meat and potato stuff is in there. The Nibiru stuff is in there. I can't remember, I may be wrong about this. I want to say the gold mining stuff is not in the scholarly translations either. I want to say that was even probably added in there, but I could be wrong. It's been over 15 years since I've read those scholarly translations. I probably need to go back and review those again. But my point is that in the audiobooks, that's exactly what I did was I pointed out that stuff. Okay, here's the stuff that's legit, and here's the stuff that obviously he's making up and throwing in there. But it's important that we create this distinction, and we put this out there for people to understand that just because Sitchin was, as the website goes, wrong on saying stuff was added in there at the prompting of L. Ron Hubbard, so that it would lend legitimacy to his Battlefield Earth book with these characters that have Anunnaki. They're basically the Anunnaki. They're mining gold. All the stuff that you hear, it's all in there. But that's why he wanted Sitchin to put that in his books, so that then L. Ron could point to that material and go, well, look, see, this is all based on fact. This is based on real stuff. Look at this, see, because those texts and those seals and all that stuff, those were real. They're all there. So this was some of the most important work that I ever did, and I'm glad that I did it, and I'm glad that now there's these brand new, crisp, great-sounding versions of this that you can now get your hands on and share with other people, because it's important to understand that just because a lot of what Sitchin said was BS doesn't mean that all of the information is BS, and that's what people like the Sitchin is wrong, people all that have tried to do. They've tried to make it seem like all the information is bunk just because there is some bunk stuff in there that Sitchin added. And that was always my standpoint from the beginning. Let's forget Sitchin. I've never even read one of his books. Fuck that guy. This information exists and is real regardless of what he has said about it and regardless of what he's added to it. So in this 30-hour collection, it's really a really good source to get closer to finding out the real truth on these subjects. If you're a researcher and a truth seeker, it's a must listen. So there you go. It's in the download shop, Josh Reed's download shop, as well as all my films and all of my presentations and audiobooks. There's so much great material in there on sale in the download shop, and it helps me be able to do more when you purchase this material. So you can find the links in the read more section of this video and also in the comment section. Okay? Go get it, friends. Happy hunting. Happy truth seeking. Take care.